My own brother got my wife pregnant. When my parents found out, they called it just a mistake, and tried to force me to forgive them both. So I did the one thing they never saw coming. I sold the house, disappeared overnight without a word, and left them to destroy each other without me. I'm going to tell you exactly what I saw, in the exact order I saw it because the sequence matters. I have been gone for 9 days on a site visit for a drainage infrastructure project 3 states over. The kind of work where you are out at 6 o'clock a mom covered in mud by noon and asleep by 9 o'clock p.m. because there is nothing else to do in a contractor's motel off a state highway. The project ran 4 days ahead of schedule. Good crew, good weather, so I caught an early flight home on a Wednesday instead of Sunday. No announcement, no hey heading back early. I figured I would just walk in, shower, sleep in my own bed and surprise Alora with dinner from the place on Caldwell Street she liked. A good husband move. A thoughtful move. I have thought about that a lot since. The marriage was not a bad one. I want to be clear about that. 6 years married, together for 10. We met when I was 27, grinding through the early years of building my consulting firm from a 2-person operation in a rented office above a print shop. Alora was steady and warm and genuinely easy to be around. We did not fight often. We had a comfortable life. I worked hard. She built her botanical illustration practice from home and we functioned well as a unit. Dax, my younger brother, different surname because our mother remarried when he was 3, was always around the edges of our life. He is 4 years younger than me and has never quite figured out how to build anything that holds. Audio production work, freelance gigs, borrowed money he paid back in pieces if at all. I got him work through my professional contacts more times than I can count. Vouched for him. Covered shortfalls not resentfully. He was my brother. That is what you do. He and Alora got along well. Always had. I never once clocked that as a problem. Why would I? I came in through the front door at 4:17 p.m. on a Wednesday. Dropped my bag in the hallway, coat on the hook. I was thinking about whether we had anything in the fridge or whether I would need to go straight back out for groceries. The dining room is visible from the hallway. You walk in and it is just there, open to the right. I saw the photos first, a spread of them across the table, printed not on a phone. Ultrasound images, the kind that come in a little folder from the clinic. Then I registered Dax standing behind Alora's chair and his hand flat against her stomach, not resting casually, not a side hug. His palm was pressed against her like he was staking a claim. I stood in the hallway for what was probably 4 seconds but felt like I was processing the information in individual frames. My brain kept trying to construct an alternative explanation and kept coming up empty. Alora turned and saw me first. The color left her face completely. Dax looked up a half second later. Nobody said anything for a moment that I will not try to dramatize. It was just silence and then it was not. Alora started crying almost immediately. Real tears, immediate, which told me this had been sitting in her chest for a while. Dax started with Brennan. Listen, which is a sentence I had no interest in hearing completed. They talked. Words came out. It was not planned. It just happened. She did not know how to tell you. Dax at one point, with his voice doing something complicated, said, I have real feelings for her. I know that does not change anything, but that is the truth. I asked one question. I asked how long. The answer was vague in a way that told me everything, long enough that the vagueness was protective. I picked up my bag from the hallway, walked upstairs, sat on the edge of the bed in the room I had shared with my wife for 6 years and looked at the wall. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Portia, my mother. I picked up. She said before I could speak, Brennan, I am so sorry. I have been trying to figure out how to tell you. She already knew. For weeks she already knew. I did not say much to her on the phone that night. Not because I was protecting her feelings. I just did not have the words yet. Or rather, I had too many, and none of them were the kind you say to your mother while sitting on the edge of a bed you suddenly cannot stand to be in. I told her I would come by in the morning. She said okay. She sounded relieved, which told me she had been carrying this and was glad to finally put it down. I thought about that for a long time after I hung up. She had been carrying it like it was her burden, like she was the one who had been wrong. I slept in the guest room that night. Alora knocked once quietly around 10 o'clock p.m. I did not answer. She did not try again. Dax, to his credit, had left the house. I heard his car pull out of the driveway sometime around 6 o'clock p.m. while I was still sitting upstairs. Small mercies. I drove to my parents' house the next morning without calling ahead. Portia answered the door before I could knock. She must have heard the car. Warren was already in the living room, sitting in the armchair he always gravitates toward when he is gearing up for a difficult conversation. The posture of a man who has rehearsed. Portia made coffee. Nobody asked if I wanted any. She just made it, set 3 mugs on the table and sat down across from me like we were about to negotiate something. Warren started. He framed it carefully, chose his words the way you do when you have been workshopping a speech in your head and want to deliver it without triggering an immediate walkout. The gist was this. Alora came to Portia approximately 2 months ago, scared and overwhelmed, not knowing what to do. Portia, not wanting to detonate the family, had advised her to figure out how to tell me herself. Warren had been brought in shortly after and made the same call. Wait, let it settle. Give them a chance to handle it. 2 months. They sat on it for 2 months. I asked Portia directly. Did you tell her to come to me? She looked at her mug. I told her she needed to. I thought she would, but you did not make sure of it. She did not answer. Which was an answer. Warren steered back. He said he understood I was hurt. He said this was an enormous thing to process and nobody was minimizing that. Then he shifted, and this is where the conversation changed texture. He said that there was now a baby involved. That changed the calculus, that a child was coming into this family regardless of how any of us felt about the circumstances. And the question now was what kind of family that child was going to be born into. He talked about Dax like a man defending a kid who broke a neighbor's window. Regrettable, yes, but let us not lose our heads about it. He said Dax was still my brother. That whatever happened, that did not change. I sat with that. Then Warren leaned forward slightly the way he does when he thinks he is landing a closing argument and said, we just need you to not ruin this family over one mistake. One mistake. He said it plainly, no hesitation, like it was a reasonable thing. Like the phrase one mistake was a container large enough to hold 2 years, however long it had actually been, of my wife and my brother and the life they built in the space I was not looking. I nodded slowly and I said, I hear you. Portia exhaled. Warren's shoulders dropped half an inch. They both interpreted that as traction, as the first crack of daylight in a difficult morning. I drank the coffee. I told them I needed time to think. They said, of course, take all the time you need. We are here. Portia hugged me at the door and held on a beat too long. I drove home. Somewhere on the expressway with the city blurring past the windows, something inside me went very, very quiet. Not numb, not broken, just decided. I pulled into my own driveway, sat in the car and looked at the house. The lights were on inside. Alora was home. I picked up my phone, scrolled past every contact I had thought about calling. Friends, family, nobody felt right. I stopped on a name I had saved 8 months ago after a colleague recommended her. Never thought I would use it. Reva Thorne, family law and asset litigation. I called. She picked up on the third ring. I said I need to start a process. I will explain everything when I get there. She said I have availability tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I will be there. I got out of the car, walked back into the house, said nothing to Alora except that I was tired and going to bed early. She said okay. She had no idea tomorrow had already started. Reva Thorne's office was on the 14th floor of a building downtown, clean and deliberately unremarkable. No framed inspirational quotes, no box of tissues on the corner of the desk, which I appreciated. She was maybe 50, with the kind of steady eye contact that told you she had heard everything and was surprised by nothing. I told her the full picture in about 20 minutes. She took notes, asked precise questions, did not editorialize. Then she walked me through what I was entitled to, what needed to happen in what sequence, and where men in my position typically made mistakes. She said the biggest one was moving too fast, filing emotionally before the financial groundwork was laid, and tipping off the other party before everything was secured. She said you want to be completely ready before they know anything is coming. I told her I understood that completely. She looked at me for a moment the way people do when they are calibrating whether a client is actually going to hold it together or fall apart at the first difficult moment. Then she opened a new folder and said, let us get started. What followed was the most focused month of my adult life. I want to be accurate about how it worked, because people always imagine this kind of thing as dramatic secret meetings, adrenaline, a sense of cinematic momentum. It was not. It was methodical. It was paperwork and phone calls and sitting across from professionals who spoke in precise, careful language while I took notes and asked follow-up questions. My firm's accountant Ren, who has worked with me for 6 years and communicates almost entirely in spreadsheets and single-sentence emails, helped me restructure the company's asset ownership. Primary holdings transferred into a newly formed limited liability company. All of it documented and time-stamped before any divorce filing touched the record. Clean, legal, airtight. The house was always in my name. Alora was never added to the deed. We had talked about it loosely years ago and never followed through. I had it independently appraised. Then I contacted a property agent I knew through a former client, a man named Solon, who dealt exclusively in off-market residential transactions. I told him I needed a quiet sale. He had a buyer within 11 days. Closing was scheduled for 30 days out. I separated my half of every joint account in increments, all within the legal boundaries Reva had outlined. Nothing abrupt, nothing that would trigger a notification Alora might notice and panic over before I was ready. All of this happened while I came home every evening. Made dinner twice a week. Kept the guest room. Responded to Alora's careful walking on eggshells attempts at conversation with short neutral answers that gave her just enough to believe we were in a slow, painful thaw. Dax started coming around again about 2 weeks in. Left a jacket on the coat hook by the front door. I noticed at the moment I walked in but said nothing. He began sitting at the kitchen table in the chair that had always been mine, which I found more revealing than anything he could have said out loud. One evening he followed me out to the back porch, put his hand on my shoulder and said, you know, we can still make this work as a family, Bren. You do not have to disappear from this kid's life. I looked at him for a moment. Then I said, you might be right. He nodded, visibly relieved. Like that settled something. I went back inside and sent Reva a confirmation email about the closing date. The thing that accelerated my timeline was the bank account. I logged in one Tuesday afternoon to verify a transfer and found a string of recent transactions I had not made. Nursery furniture, a crib, a good one, not cheap, wall paint in 3 colors, a rocking chair from a specialty baby shop on the other side of the city. Alora was decorating, redecorating, planning for a life in my house, raising her child with my brother, spending from an account we still shared because nobody had told her she needed to stop. I took screenshots of every transaction. Forwarded them to Riva without comment. She replied 12 minutes later. "This is useful. Let us move the timeline up by 4 days." I wrote back, "Tell me when to confirm the movers." She did. That evening I opened my laptop and found a new email sitting at the top of my inbox. Subject line: property transfer completion confirmed. The house sale had closed. New ownership effective in 30 days. The buyers were ready to take possession on a Tuesday morning. I closed the laptop, looked around the kitchen. The paint Alora had picked 3 years ago, the light fixture we had argued over for a month before agreeing on it, the window above the sink that got good morning light. 30 days, nobody in this house knew the clock had already started. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much but from constantly managing what you show. Every morning I woke up in the guest room, ran through my mental checklist. What was confirmed, what was pending, what needed to move that day, and then walked downstairs and became a version of myself that was just convincing enough to not raise any flags. Not warm, not cold, just present, just functional. The kind of husband who was clearly still processing something difficult but had not given up entirely. It was the most precise acting I had ever done, and I had no idea I was capable of it until I needed to be. Alora was watching me carefully during this period. I could feel it, the way she would pause slightly before speaking, reading my energy before committing to a sentence. She was trying to figure out where I was, whether I was moving towards something or away from it. I gave her just enough ambiguity to keep her reading instead of acting. Dax was easier to manage because he wanted to believe everything was trending toward okay. That has always been his nature. Optimism as a survival strategy, a way of not having to sit with the weight of what he had actually done. He came by 3 or 4 times that final stretch. Each time a little more comfortable, a little more at home. He started using the good coffee maker, the one I bought. I said nothing. My parents hosted a family dinner about 10 days before Tuesday. I went, of course I went. The table was set the way Portia always sets it when she is trying to manufacture normal. Good plates, candles, the kind of effort that says we are a family that eats together and therefore everything is fine. Warren poured wine. Dax sat next to Alora. Someone had put on low music in the background. Baby names came up somewhere between the main course and dessert. Portia floated a few. Alora responded with genuine warmth. Dax leaned back in his chair with the ease of a man who had already moved into a future he had not earned yet. I ate, responded when spoken to. Laughed once at something Warren said about a neighbor's fence dispute that had nothing to do with any of this. Nobody at that table had any idea that in 10 days the ground beneath all of it was going to drop away completely. I drove home that night feeling nothing except the clean, quiet satisfaction of a plan running exactly on schedule. 3 days before Tuesday, Alora sat down next to me while I was working at the kitchen table. She waited until I looked up. Then she said quietly, like she had been practicing it, "I know this is not what you imagined. I know that. But I think you are handling this really maturely, Brenna. I want you to know I appreciate that." She meant it. That was the thing. She was completely sincere. She had looked at my stillness and my measured responses and my presence at that family dinner and concluded that I was a man finding his way toward acceptance. That my silence was the sound of healing. I looked at her and said, "I just want what is right." She nodded slowly with something like relief in her face. Then she went to bed. I sat at the table for another hour finishing what I was working on. A handover brief for my regional contact in Halcourt. Clean documentation of every active project, every client relationship, every ongoing contract. My transition out of the day-to-day of this office framed internally as a strategic expansion move, which it was just not in the way anyone here understood yet. I confirmed the movers that night. Confirmed the courier service for the 3 envelopes. Riva's office had everything prepared, signed, filed, and ready to dispatch. I booked a hotel room 2 streets from the house for Monday night. Then I texted G. "Tuesday is the day. I will explain everything when I get there." He replied in under a minute. "Room's ready when you are. Drive safe." I set the phone down and started packing. Not everything, just what was actually mine. Clothes, documents, the external drive with my firm's records, a few things from the home office. I was almost done when I reached the shelf above the desk. Most of it was just accumulated clutter, things that accumulate in a life without you noticing. But on the far end, small and slightly dusty, was a framed photograph of me and my grandfather. Taken maybe 25 years ago, the 2 of us on a fishing dock, both squinting into the sun. I wrapped it in a shirt, tucked it into the bag. That was the only sentimental decision I made that entire month. Monday was tomorrow. Tuesday was 36 hours away. Everything was in place. Every piece exactly where it needed to be. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Dax. "Hey, you free this weekend? Thought we could grab lunch. Just us." I read it twice, set the phone face down on the bed. Did not reply. I checked out of the hotel at 10 o'clock a.m. Everything I was taking with me was already in the car. I loaded it Sunday night after Alora went to sleep, one quiet trip at a time through the side door. Nothing dramatic. By the time I walked out of that house on Monday morning with my laptop bag over one shoulder, it looked like I was heading to the office. Alora was in the kitchen. She said good morning. I said good morning back. She asked if I wanted coffee. I told her I would grab some on the way. That was the last conversation we ever had. I did not sleep much at the hotel. Not from anxiety, I want to be clear about that. More like the way you stay alert the night before an early flight. Everything was already done. There was nothing left to execute except the morning itself. And the morning had its own momentum. Now at 7:00 a.m. the moving company arrived at the house. They had a letter from the new property owner's agent granting them access to begin staging the property for the incoming buyers. Completely legal. I had arranged it through Solon during the sale agreement. Standard practice for an occupied to vacant transition. At 8:00 a.m. a courier dispatched from Reva's office delivered 3 separate envelopes to the front door of the house. The first was the divorce filing formally served to Alora. The second was the official notice of property sale, new ownership, confirmed 60-day vacate requirement as per the sale terms. Contact details for the new owner's agent for any questions. The third was a letter from the bank confirming the closure of all joint accounts with a clear statement that my share had been transferred to a new individual account and hers had been separated into her own with whatever balance remained on her side. I was having coffee at a window table in the hotel's ground floor cafe when I calculated they would have arrived. I finished the cup, went upstairs, collected my bag. 8:50 a.m. Alora called. I watched her name on the screen until it stopped. 9:03 a.m. Dax called. Same. 9:19 a.m. Portia. Same. 9:34 a.m. Warren. Same. I was not ignoring them out of theater. I just had nothing left to say to any of them that had not already been said through Reva's paperwork. Every question they had was answered in those envelopes. Every explanation they needed was filed in that courthouse. I had spoken through the only language that actually meant anything legal, financial, permanent, and there was nothing a phone conversation could add to that. My phone lit up continuously on the passenger seat as I pulled out of the hotel. I let it. Somewhere around the 40-minute mark on the highway, a text came through from Corwin, my old neighbor, a genuinely decent man who had no part in any of this. He wrote, Bren, there are movers outside and Alora is on the porch. What is happening? You okay? I typed back. Moving on. Take care of yourself, Corwin. He replied with a single word. Understood. That was the last message I sent for a while. About an hour into the drive I turned the phone off entirely, not blocking anyone, just done with the noise of it. I drove with the windows up and the radio off and let the highway do what highways do, reduce everything to forward motion. The feeling I had somewhere out there in that middle stretch of road with nothing on either side except flat land and distance was not what I expected. Not relief exactly. Not satisfaction. Something more like the way a room feels after you have cleared it out completely. Emptier than you are used to, but cleaner, more honest about what it actually is. I stopped at a rest area about 2 hours in. Stretched. Turned the phone back on. 23 missed calls. 14 voicemails. A string of texts I scrolled past without reading, and then one from G at the bottom. You close. I wrote back out. Put the car in drive. Pulled back onto the highway. Then the phone buzzed one more time. I glanced at the screen. Dax. A text, not a call. 4 words. Where are you, Bren? I read it once. Set the phone face down on the passenger seat. Kept driving, but somewhere around the next mile marker something occurred to me. A detail I had not thought about until right then, sitting alone on an empty highway with everything behind me and nothing in front of me yet. Dax did not have the first idea what he was actually walking into. Not just the house, not just the accounts, the nursery, furniture, had bought the crib, the rocking chair, all of it had been purchased on the joint credit card that was now closed with a balance that had defaulted entirely to her name under the separation agreement. Every piece of that nursery his problem now. I almost pulled over. Did not, just drove. Halcourt suited me in a way I had not anticipated. It is a smaller city than where I had spent the last decade. Less noise, more sky, the kind of place where you can think in a straight line without constant interruption. G had been based here for 3 years and always said it was underrated. He was right. My apartment was clean and minimal and entirely mine, which was something I had not fully appreciated until I had it. The regional office expanded faster than projected. 2 new contracts in the first 6 weeks. I was busier than I had been in years. And the work felt different now, not divided between a career I was building and a life I was maintaining. Just the work, clean and forward moving, which turned out to be exactly what I needed. I blocked every number connected to the old life. At the end of the 3rd week, not in one dramatic sweep, one by one over a few days as each one called again, and it became clear that nothing productive was going to come from answering. Portia switched to email somewhere around week 4. I did not read those either. At some point the emails stopped too. Or maybe they kept coming and I stopped noticing. Both possibilities were fine. I did not go looking for information about what was happening back there. I want to be honest about that. I had no appetite for it. Whatever was unfolding in that house and that family, and the dynamic between 2 people who had chosen each other under the worst possible conditions and now had to actually live with that choice, none of it was my story anymore. But information finds you anyway if you stay still long enough. Corwin sent one text about 6 weeks out. He is a decent man and he kept it simple. Wanted you to know the house sold to a young couple. Looks good. Hope you are well, Bren. I thanked him. We have not spoken since. Ren mentioned without editorializing the way she never does that Dax had contacted the firm looking for a forwarding address or contact number for me. She told him she did not have one, which was true because I had told her exactly that to say. A former colleague, someone I had worked alongside for years, no agenda, just a man making conversation over drinks at a conference, mentioned that he had run into Alora at a mutual acquaintance's event somewhere around the 3-month mark. He said she looked tired. Said she had asked if anyone had heard from me. He told her no. That was the end of it. Through G. Over time and without me asking directly, the shape of what happened assembled itself. They had to vacate within the required window. No savings, no plan, nowhere obvious to go. They moved into Warren and Portia's house. All 4 of them. A pregnancy. 2 people whose entire relationship had been built in secret and stolen time. Now sharing a guest room in a 3-bedroom house with 2 people who were quietly devastated by the whole situation. The financial pressure hit immediately. Dax's freelance work was never infrastructure. It was momentum, and momentum requires stability underneath it, which he did not have. Alora had the nursery debt sitting entirely in her name. The credit card balance, the furniture, the rocking chair, the paint, all of it her liability under the separation agreement, because Reva had structured it that way and I had signed it that way. Their relationship, the thing they had burned everything down for, did not survive ordinary life. It rarely does in my experience. What they had was a secret, and secrets have a particular kind of energy that disappears the moment everyone already knows. Without the concealment, without the urgency, they were just 2 people with incompatible habits and a shared catastrophic decision, living under someone else's roof with a baby and no financial runway. The baby was born. It did not fix anything. It just made everything more complicated and more permanent simultaneously. My parents kept calling for longer than I expected. Portia especially, she is persistent in the way that people are when they genuinely believe that enough contact will eventually produce a different result. It will not. Not because I am punishing anyone. There just is not a version of that conversation that produces something I need. I have nothing to fix over there. I did not break it. Late on a Thursday evening, about 4 months in, I was finishing a survey report in the Halcourt office. City visible through the window behind me. The kind of quiet that settles in a building after everyone else has gone home. My phone was on the desk face up. A number I did not recognize tried to connect. The prefix was from back home. It rang 4 times, then stopped. A voicemail notification appeared on the screen. I looked at it for a moment. Then I pressed dismiss and went back to the report in front of me. Some doors do not need to be reopened. Not out of bitterness, just because there is nothing on the other side worth the walk back. I finished the report, saved it, closed the laptop, picked up my coat and walked out into the night. Thank you so much for watching till the end. Wishing you all the best, stay healthy, and take care.